Hi, I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so glad that you've made your way here and that I'm now sharing these podcasts here on YouTube. In my 25 years in the beauty industry, I have worked with thousands of women. I have witnessed so many beautiful, powerful, smart, and kind women who are hiding instead of shining. My mission is to empower you to own your true power and beauty inside and out, to be truly confident and shine through your skin. Lord knows the world needs your light. I'm committed to helping you understand the choices that you are making that are working for or against you. I'll also be sharing beauty tips and tools your mother never taught you, and together we will bust urban beauty myths. Make sure to subscribe today to receive episodes right when they are released. For those who prefer listening to the audio podcast, head over to sacredbeautylifestyle.com. That's sacredbeautylifestyle.com, and you can find the platform of your choice. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. I am so excited to delve into some juicy topics here with Brooke Rozmenoski. She is a functional nutrition practitioner who works with women to help them feel their best despite life stresses and past experiences. Often women are left thinking they need to just accept how they're feeling due to age, life, or kids. With her personal training background, her practice works through all aspects that come into play, influencing women's health, including hormonal health, nutritional needs, and lifestyle factors. Brooke, I'm so happy to have you here with me today on the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. This is a good break in my week because we're moving and I'm just ready to dive into something other than boxes right now.
Oh my gosh, awesome. Well, and thank you for carving out the time in your busy schedule. Speaking of which, I know you're a mom
Yes.
and a business owner and you're moving. That's a lot.
Yeah. It never really feels like a lot when you're in it until like you explain to other people what's going on. You're like, oh, that kind of is a lot.
Because you just do what you have to do, which is
Yeah.
what most of us do, especially, I want to say, especially as women, like juggling these hats, right?
Yes. You're so used to playing many roles at once and we get caught up in it. I very much am guilty of it. I can just put my head down and power through. And I have to remind myself that's gotten me in like bad health positions in the past when I do that. And I have to remind myself sometimes to slow down. And sometimes it's okay to just not take something on.
I love that you brought that in right out the gate because that is definitely the new way. We are moving into a new paradigm where the pushing, the overdrive, the overarching, the masculine traits, and this is not an insult on men, it's just that we have been living out of balance, meaning we all have masculine and feminine, right? And we need both to operate in an optimal, holistic, functional way. And
Yeah.
yet we've been working in this overarching overdrive. And yet when we stop and we slow down, we actually have access to our infinite wisdom, our femininity. The feminine is where the intuition comes in. So right when you said that, that just kind of dropped in and I wanted to share it. And it also makes me want to ask you about your history because you said in the past I would have pushed through and not paid attention to my health. Is there something you'd like to share? No, just kidding. I'd love to hear, we'd love to hear about how you got where you are today, a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I actually started in the industry over 15 years ago, but I started as a personal trainer and I was not in the realm that I am in the field now. And a lot of what's led me here was starting with my own personal experiences and then seeing things with my clients about, well, we can start when I was little. I was overweight and going through high school, playing sports and things. I had started to lose some of the weight, but then when I stopped playing sports, the weight started to come back on. And if you are in like your mid 30s and 40s, maybe early 50s, like I call it the snack wheels generation, we kind of grew up with this idea that if we wanted to feel good and be healthy, it just meant go on a diet. And it was low fat trends, it was metabolic, it was all these different things. And it was kind of at the detriment of our own hormonal health and how we were feeling. We went through this for decades. A lot of women did. And when I wanted to lose weight, that's kind of what I did. I would go on to something like that. And so this up and down relationship with food and my body and what I was doing really kind of compounded over the years. And I usually say it's not the one thing that caused an issue. It's usually a compounding of several issues. So that was feeling like the main compounding factor that started to add to. And then about midway through my career, I left a really unhealthy relationship. And less than a year later, my dad passed away. So it was very much a trigger, or I'll say like the straw that broke the camel's back. And my body went haywire. My hormones went off. I had gained 20 pounds in like a 4-month period with no justification in my nutrition or movement intake to really, explain it. And I wasn't sleeping well at night. And I had developed what we call secondary hypothyroidism, where I wasn't converting my T4 to my T3 in my thyroid. And it took several different physician visits to get an answer before I kept saying, something's going on. I can't figure it out. And I finally started to go to a naturopathic physician who took a whole body approach versus just looking at the markers and seeing if I needed something. And that's when I finally started to get answers into what was happening. And I really started to see how much the stressors and traumas that I had endured and my mindset of just move on, right? Just power through and just move to the next thing and not really step back to tune into like supporting myself through what I had gone through or, paying attention to what it could have done to my body and how much of an impact that was playing on my health. And it took me 3 to 4 years of going through recovery practices and supporting my hormones and nutrition before I really started to just feel like myself again after all of that. And I was seeing a lot of it with clients. I was seeing a lot of women who were just not getting answers, not feeling good, not having any explanations for it. And as we started to implement some similar things to what I had been doing, we started to see that they started to finally kind of equilibrate back is the best way to say it. So that's when I really started to switch what I was doing and went back to school for more of the naturopathic side of health.
I love it. You mentioned that you had gone to the doctor several times, your Western medicine doctor, and that they weren't seeing a connection or markers. I just want to highlight this and ask you, are you saying that they were looking at it and were telling you that your numbers or everything looked normal? Is that what they were saying? That drives me bonkers. I see you shaking your head.
Oh, yeah. And then, with thyroid, they're usually only going to pull maybe TSH, which is like your brain's communication to your thyroid, maybe T4, which your TSH gets converted to T4, but they rarely are pulling a full thyroid panel. So I'll have a lot of clients who are like, my thyroid is fine. My doctor said everything is good. And then I'm like, well, can you send me the lab work that they checked so I can see? And it's usually 1 to 2 markers at most. And that's not telling us a full picture of what's happening. And that happened to me with 3 different physicians until I finally had to pay out of pocket to get a full thyroid panel done on myself. And everything was great. My TSH was lab normal, in quotations. So was my T4, but my T3 was clinically low to where I needed thyroid medication, but no one was checking it.
God, that's crazy making. I'm sitting here thinking like I don't want to get political, and yet I don't think they want us to know the truth. I don't think they're taught to look at the holistic picture, because then we wouldn't be in the cycle of needing the drugs that they tell us that we're going to need. And we just put all of our trust then in the Western medical system, right? Like, why would we just look at certain things instead of the whole complete picture? Like, duh.
Yeah, I could definitely go down that path. I don't think all physicians are trained in the way that they should be and fully understanding the whole picture and what they're looking at. And yes, absolutely. A part of it is more of our Western structure right now is not health care. It's not proactive health care. It's sick care and it's reactive care. And it's really looking at, are you in a range where we need to give you a medication? And if you're not, then you're fine, according to them. Not looking at, are you in a range where you're actually feeling your best and your health is optimized? That's the difference.
Right. Thank you for saying that, because I think so many times women get looked at as if they're crazy when they bring the way that they're feeling
Yes.
to the doctor, and men will often ignore the way they're feeling. So, and then later you'll see disease foster when we're not paying attention to how we feel. Women are presenting how we're feeling and they're going, you're fine. It's in your head. You must be stressed.
Yeah. These things aren't happening like tomorrow, right? It's not like something I did today that caused cholesterol issues tomorrow or caused my thyroid to go off next week. It's a compounding impact of these things. And that's why I kind of talk about like my dieting mindset through my teen years and into my early 20s and how that heavily impacted when I did go through a major stressor, how my body just went off because it's not happening in one time. It's a compounding interest.
It's always the straw that broke the camel back. I used to run my now Wasbin's chiropractic wellness center, and you'd have people come in and they would say, "Oh, yeah, I bent over to put my sock on and I threw out my back," and it's like, "Yeah, well, that's not exactly what happened." Right?
Yes, that's what triggered it, but that's not actually the issue. Yeah.
It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I wonder if you could speak to a little bit more about that, where you talked about dieting and the yo-yo effect and how that impacts hormones for our listeners to pay attention to, because I think a lot of us go through dieting. There's such an obsession about
Yes.
weight and fitness and how we look. And I think social media really impacts that too. And yeah.
Yeah, I like to explain it best. I call it like a triangle of function. It's not, a medical term by any means. If you go to your doctor and say my triangle's off, they're going to think you're crazy. But it's really, when you're thinking of a triangle, it's the best way to picture it. And at the top of that triangle, think of your thyroid. And we think of our thyroid when we think of metabolism, we think of gaining and losing weight, but metabolic function, it's essentially the control of your whole endocrine system. So if your thyroid is off, we can already assume that something is off with your sex hormones, the way that your body's responding to stress, your GI system may move slower. There can be a lot of other things that are impacted by that. And thyroid is one, impacted by stressors, but it's also very much impacted by us not eating enough, which is one of the biggest things that I see with women, especially if you grew up in that snack wells generation. Not eating enough and dieting is a stress on the body, whether we realize it or not. When you're asking your body to keep up with the same amount of energy demands, meaning waking up, moving around, running your day-to-day errands, brushing your teeth, all of the energy demands that your body has on itself. We don't think about those things. Your body requires a certain amount of calories, which are energy essentially, to perform those functions. And when we pull that energy away, that energy source away from our body, but we ask it to keep up with the same energy demand, we can do that for a short period of time without long-term implications. But when we're doing that over a period of decades, we're putting some pretty heavy stress demands on our body, and our body uses hormones to prioritize a couple things: procreation or survival, right? And one of our hormones, especially like cortisol, is essentially like survival hormone. And then we have our procreation or our sex hormones that eventually, when we're trying to prioritize survival because we're trying to keep up with the same energy demand but not giving it the energy, your body will start to sacrifice sex hormones. So think of those as one of the other parts of the triangle that will start to get sacrificed if stressors are not put in check, essentially. I like to explain it as a cup of water. Every time that you have a stressor in your life, you need to pour some water into that cup. And the name of the game is don't let the water overflow from the cup. And we all have very different stressors. Having hypothyroid means that I have to watch those stressors in my life. Someone not having hypothyroid can probably add more stressors into that cup than I could. So we need to look at how are the stressors in my life, meaning physical, mental, the stimulation is a stressor, all these demands and things that I have. And am I balancing that water in that cup? Because if I'm not, it may not impact me today, but it's going to eventually take a hit somewhere else. And that's where I see women in their 30s and 40s starting to feel those impacts in their body, because we think, oh, it's just because I hit my 30s and 40s. But really, it's because of maybe the diets and all these things that we were doing in our 20s that are starting to have negative implications after we've had kids and we have more life stressors that have come up. And all those things that can happen decades later, that stress has started to come out of the water. And that's where we can start to see the impacts of dieting and things playing a negative impact on our body.
That was such a great explanation. I like to think as life as a credit card, and eventually you have to pay for the charges, right? So I think that sometimes people aren't realizing the yo-yo effect of what we've been doing and how that plays out. And then you also brought in something else really important, which I think is the level of stress. I think we have so many people operating in fight or flight mode. So many people, I mean, we've had collective trauma the past couple of years. We are recording this in December 2022. So we've had a collective trauma. And
Yeah.
I think we don't even realize sometimes, like how you were saying, you just do what you got to get done. Like we are just kind
Yeah.
of like badasses often, and we just do what we got to do. And we don't slow down sometimes to even realize. The reason I brought this in about the stress and highlighting this, because the other day, I'm always studying. I love nutrition, and it plays such an important role in how you look, how you feel.
Yep.
And I'm always listening to different talks on it, researching. And all of a sudden, I was thinking about how so many people have a hard time getting pregnant. And well, yeah, your body's not in make baby mode when you're in fight or flight or stress mode.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
that's a huge reason why so many people aren't getting pregnant. And then they're like, it's like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then they're going for all the artificial ways or like medical route to implement pregnancy when your body is so brilliant. It's actually telling you, I'm not in a space to make and hold a baby right now. And maybe there's some other things that need to be handled. And the way you just talked about the hormones, the hormones, oh, I'm going to get it wrong now. The stress hormones and the
Procreation hormone. Yeah.
thank you. Wow.
The IVF process, that alone too, it frustrates me. I've had several clients go through it and thousands of dollars in, and they don't have answers and they're not getting a full picture. Because when we think of stressors, we think of our day to day. Maybe we think of bills, maybe we think of kids, we think of, the typical stressors that most people can have. But we don't also think of physical stressors that can come into play. We have acute and we have chronic. And what we're talking about more today is the chronic physical stressors. Acute is like I broke my ankle, right? But chronic is I've been living with these pathogens that are in my gut, or a gut infection, or I constantly am not going to bed on time and I am getting 5 hours of sleep and I'm waking up exhausted, and then I'm drinking caffeine and putting my adrenals into overdrive, and my nervous system response is heightened constantly. And I'm staying up late and binging TV shows, and I'm drinking alcohol at night. So my actual quality of sleep is impaired. Or it can be that somebody could have like a mold toxicity, for example. There are so many different things that are unseen stressors that are just kind of accepted, that actually can be stressors that are impacting our hormonal function and how we're feeling too.
And does this affect, I'm guessing this affects the way that you are able to work out and build muscle?
Yeah, exercise is a stress. And that's another one we don't think of as a stressor. We just go work out, and we sometimes will try, like, if we haven't done it for a while, we'll go back to what we used to do in our 20s or what we thought worked at some time. And we don't understand that if we go back to that stress cup, whenever our stressors in our life change, the stressors that we're adding into that cup need to complement. And as our life stress increases, then the stressors that we are in control of need to be managed, meaning exercise, our nutrition intake, sleep, all of those things. And exercise is one that I often see with women, especially, getting mismanaged, because we will go do our high intensity classes or our group fitness style classes or CrossFit, or especially if you're the type A personality, you just want to go feel crushed and like you did something, or you don't feel like you did anything good at all, right? Or we're just so desperate to see results, we work out harder instead of realizing that our body might be screaming at us for us to do less and be more restorative in nature.
I love that you brought in workout as a stressor in your body, because I don't think that's factored in. And what a great way to look at the holistic picture of that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I often say that I think people work out way too hard today. And I joke that, like, oh yeah, I don't want to work out that hard. And it's not that I don't take care of my body or that I don't want to be fit or really toned, because I do, but I typically choose Pilates and dance because I like the way it elongates and it tones without causing a lot of stress. Though this makes me think of a question. I know it's very personal too, but a lot of our listeners, you know, post baby or entering early 40s even start thinking about how menopause and these hormonal changes, or even how you have hormonal changes after a baby, but primarily with menopause, how you might need to change your workouts and start thinking about your bones and making sure they're strong and your muscles. Do you have anything to share there?
Strength training is wildly beneficial, especially as we're aging. One, it helps support our HGH hormone, which is our human growth hormone. And when we think of that word, we can think of like bodybuilders, for example, but it's actually a really good recovery hormone and we need it. So strength training is really beneficial at helping support that. The other thing that strength training is really beneficial for is like our bone density. So as we're getting older, if you've ever heard of anyone getting like a bone density scan or anything, strength training is really beneficial at helping support any prevention of like an osteoporosis or an osteopenia. You don't have to strength train 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be like bodybuilding splits or CrossFit style stuff or anything, but I have a lot of women who think strength training comes in the form of like their group fitness classes, which it absolutely can. But again, you have to be cautious of the stress. Sometimes strength training can be boring. Like, for example, my strength training right now is like a deadlift, for example, and then I rest for a minute. And then I might do a squat and I'll rest for a little bit. And then it can feel boring. There's a lot of resting happening, but how we're doing it can very much depend on our body and what we need. But strength training, I usually say 3 times a week, especially as we're getting older, of maybe some total body focused movements can be wildly beneficial hormonally, help the aging process, especially just if we're going to get older and if we have grandkids or anything, being able to get up and move around, it can be really good from a vitality standpoint.
I love thinking about that. Thank you. Prevention is best. I mean, yes, we can do correction, but if you want to feel and look your best, it does take commitment and it is a lifestyle, like you mentioned as well, that you really work with people in lifestyle. Something came in, a thought or a question, because you were talking about people sort of mismanaging diet and then this output of energy. And I know today that a lot of people are doing the intermittent fasting. And I think a lot of people are doing it wrong. And then what if we are doing this fasting and then we're going to push our body? Like, can you speak to like any misconceptions about intermittent fasting and like being careful with what you're doing to your body simultaneously?
Yeah, I hear this one all the time. And there's so many different ways that people will fast. The one thing I try to remind people of is you're already fasting on a daily basis. When you finish your dinner and then you don't eat breakfast again until the next day, that's a fast that's happening. So we have to keep in mind that there are benefits to fasting, but the way in which fasting is done is going to tell you or be the determinant of whether that's benefit is negative or positive. And if we have gut issues, for example, it can be beneficial for us to have some sort of fast time in between us eating, meaning I usually wouldn't encourage a client with gut issues to be snacking all day long because think of your gut as a muscle. If we are using it all day long and never giving it a break, we can be stressing our gut out further. So sometimes it's beneficial to take a little bit of a break between meals. However, especially when we're talking hormonal issues with women, women are more hypersensitive from a hormone standpoint than men are, for example. A lot of nutrition studies that you see and we see the benefits of are done on men. They are not done on women, and especially women of cyclical times, right? So if we are cycling, and this is not usually where we're seeing these things done on women, and a lot of that is because women are more hypersensitive from a hormonal standpoint. We usually carry the children, right? So that means that we are going to be more hypersensitive and our body's going to be more hypersensitive to those things from a procreation standpoint. And when I'm saying procreation, I'm just meaning happy hormones. Just think of it that way. So when we're fasting and we're essentially depriving ourselves of nutrients for an extended period of time, when we do that over a longer period of time, our body can have a stress response that can come into play. And as women, it's not always necessarily beneficial, especially if we're already dealing with hormone issues, with which probably over 60% of the women that we see already have some sort of a hormonal imbalance that's happening, whether it's stress related, sex hormone related, whatever it is. So majority of those women I would never have doing an intermittent fast because their body's already in a heightened state of stress. So you take the average person and we do it because we think it's going to be a faster way to weight loss. It's giving us a calorie restriction. We think it's fat burning to do it, or we'll drink coffee in the morning with, butter or something in it because we think that's helping us. You're not getting the benefit out of it that you think you're getting. And it's not the same benefit that's relayed in the studies that are done on men when we do it.
It's so fascinating how much misinformation there is and how we really could stand to get personal guidance.
Yeah.
Like we all have our own makeup. And I also really love that you brought in thinking of the gut as a muscle. And I think so many people have gut issues and don't realize it, like whether it's the bacteria is off from antibiotics or different things. And sometimes people don't, people come in that way. Like I know my daughter has always had digestive issues, being hypersensitive,
Yeah.
and so there's something that could be innate, but it can be so personal. And then unfortunately, this is where the internet can be a big issue. It drives me bonkers with skin and nutrition alike that people can read so much out there or can listen to influencers and then think they have the solution to their problem. And yet we might get a temporary fix, but we might be actually doing quite a bit of harm.
I love that you just said the influencers too, right? I call it the honeymoon stage of things. Anytime we're implementing something new on our body, we're implementing a new stressor. We don't know if that stressor is going to be good or bad until we've been in that stressor for an extended period of time and we can see the implications on our body, especially if we're guessing at things, right? So, anytime we start something new, we're kind of entering a honeymoon stage where we might be reducing a burden on our system, we might be lessening an immune response on something, and we may be making our body temporarily feel better, but it may not be the long-term solution. And whatever that underlying issue might have been, eventually is going to rear its head again. You may have just put it at bay for a short period of time. So, it's really important to keep in mind that that honeymoon stage is not a, I guess, indicator of how successful something is on you. What's a true indicator is if it's something you're able to maintain long term and it's helping you achieve optimal health and staying there, especially when we see things from an influencer standpoint, supplements, nutritional protocols, when they're posting what they eat in a day, all those kinds of things. You have to remember that you see a picture of that influencer's day. You don't know what's going on inside their body. You don't know their life stressors, whether they have kids or don't have kids, if they have all these different things. Unless you are the exact same genetics and blueprint and stressors and everything, it's probably not going to impact you the same.
Okay, I love that you called it the honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
because I joke that that you can date almost anybody for like 3 or 6 months before the real shit starts surfacing and you start
Yeah.
to see the issues. And it's the same kind of thing with your body, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as a woman too, it's going to take our body about 90 to 120 days to really, I don't like to say like catch up, but kind of catch up to what we're doing and really show the impact. So most women that work with us for at least 6 months of time, because we're not going to see massive shifts in 90 to 120 days from a health standpoint. It's going to take some time for our hormones to really kind of reflect what's happening in there.
Yeah, I think people need to start learning to have a little bit of patience and to implement like a couple of things at a time, or to get the guidance to what they're implementing, because I find a lot of people bounce around and then I'm thinking internally like all of those implications and how impactful that could be in a negative way, the jumping around. Do you see that a lot too? Do people come to you and they're like, I tried this, I tried this, I tried this, but they didn't wait for anything to actually work?
Yes, especially so as a woman, we have to remember that we are cyclical, whereas a man is going through those hormonal stages in maybe a 24-hour period. We are going through hormonal stages over a 28-day on average period, meaning that we are not the same person every single day through the month as a woman. And that's a beautiful thing, actually. It's nothing to be frustrated about, but it's something to very much understand how that can impact you. So if you, let's say you start a diet and you do it for 2 weeks, but that 2 weeks happen to be the luteal stage of your hormonal cycle when your progesterone is higher and your body is more sensitive to stressors and you're leading up to your period and your body has an increased need for calories and your body has an increased need for sleep and you're not meeting any of those needs, you're going to feel like a royal failure than if you try to do something in the follicular stage where your estrogen is more dominant and more of a benefit to you and you can handle stressors differently. You don't have as much of an increased need in calories or sleep. You're going to feel very different. So a lot of times we go through these, we don't know what stage of our cycle we're in, we're do something, and we're like, well, this worked last time, but it's not working this time, and I just failed. And then we bring on the guilt and the shame of like, well, this was my fault, when in reality you just weren't paying attention to what your body needed at that time frame and doing the things that you needed to support it through that. And that absolutely means it needs to be test run for a 90 to 120 day period. So we've gone through 3 to 4 hormonal cycles to watch those shifts over that time.
I love that. That's so much more complete. I was chuckling when you said that we're different every day, and I was like thinking from a personality perspective, like, yeah, like who am I today?
Sometimes that too, yeah.
As a woman, though, because we do feel so much, like it could be kind of fun to like jokingly embrace all of that part, or
Yeah.
these pieces of us, and to think about, yeah, I am different every day, and like, what do I need right now? But from a higher perspective or the broader perspective, really getting that individual guidance on something so important like our health, right? And
One
not
of the
putting it
best
in.
things I did
Yes, go ahead.
when I started to kind of like assess my hormones and my schedules, I started like at the beginning of each week I tracked my cycles and looking at my cycle and like, where am I in my cycle? How am I probably going to be feeling this week? And then what does my calendar look like? And is my calendar and the things that are on my calendar matching up to how I'm hormonally going to be feeling and energetically going to be feeling, where I'm not pushing against my body in that time frame? So I can support and knowing the times when I can push and knowing the times when I need to rest.
That is such a fantastic gift. Thank you. I'm starting to learn that at
Yeah.
50 to like look at different, like if I know I have this big thing going on, how am I going to counterbalance that? What is the optimal self-care that I need? I mean, I always take care of myself, but I mean what you said, like really paying attention to the broader perspective every week, every month, like where am I and what should I expect of myself at this time? And
Yeah.
how am I going to nurture myself? I love that.
Yeah. It can help you be one, gentler with yourself, giving yourself a little bit more grace, but it can help you to one, also like even with my husband, it's helped me to really be able to communicate to him like, hey, this is how I'm feeling and this is the support I need from you right now. And this is not something I feel like doing right now, or actually this is the time of the month that would be beneficial for me to do this, right? And so he can understand
Mm.
where I'm at too.
Beautiful. Self-awareness is so important. That's where journaling, I think, is so helpful too sometimes.
Yes.
And I really, really, really love the tip that you shared. I wonder, I have a couple of questions for you. I wonder if you could share with our listeners, like, if you were able to go back to your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now, and you could enlighten her, what would you whisper in her ear?
I think the biggest thing I would tell myself at that time frame is one, don't date the crappy guy that I was dating at that time. And then two, to not be so desperate for the physical things to come out the way that I wanted them to. Like, right, not be so focused on the aesthetics of everything and just focus more on what I was needing at that time frame. Because I mean, while like I wouldn't go back and change anything, right? Because it wouldn't have me where I am now, but I feel like I would have been able to grow and be so much gentler to myself in that time frame.
Yeah, 100%. Love it. And what about a big message that you have for the universe? Like, is there something that you find that like infuriates you and drives your passion at the same time that you would be screaming with a megaphone from a mountaintop? What is that message?
I really, really wish that women could understand how powerful their body can be when they really tune into how it's meant to function. And a lot of that is to ditch this whole, aesthetically focused thing like I did in my 20s and really get into how am I made to feel? How am I made to function? My body is actually a really amazing thing that I go through these stages and it can do awesome stuff if I let it. And we just really have to tune into that because way too many women are working against themselves on a daily basis.
Thank you. That is such a beautiful tip of embracing and bringing in all of you. I love that.
Yeah.
You have been a plethora of information and an absolute blast to hang out with and share and bounce this stuff off each other. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and time with the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast listeners. I wonder if you could tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah. Instagram is probably the easiest. I'm probably on there way more than I should be. It's Brooke Rozzy is my Instagram. And I also have a podcast called The Power of a Woman. It will be back out in the beginning of the year. We're on a little seasonal break right now.
Little hiatus. Awesome. And we'll have all of Brooke's info in the show notes for you. Thank you again so much, Brooke.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast, which is now being shared here on YouTube. I hope this episode brought you insights and inspiration to radiate and shine with confidence. Remember to subscribe so you receive new episodes hot off the press right when they are released. And follow me on Instagram for more juicy tips at I am Lisa Eddy. Also, ladies and gentlemen, when you subscribe, like, and share these episodes, it helps me to get seen by more people. And that means a lot to me because I am committed to reaching millions of women across the globe and waking them up to the sacred beauty lifestyle, owning their true power and beauty, both inside and out. Now, more than ever, we need more women shining instead of hiding. When we band together, we are unstoppable. This is how we change the world, together. Remember the sacred beauty lifestyle and get on out there and shine. The world needs your light.